commission to order at 7:02. Roll call. Katie Sadrowski. Here. Lucy Nolan Dilbert.
Present.
Rob No is absent. Genevieve is absent. Craig Sims is absent. Chris Dilbert.
Here.
And Rachel Whitsitt is present. All right, so public, approval of the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Support.
Okay. Yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Public comments on agenda? All right. Approval of the minutes from March 5th, 2024.
I'll make a motion that we approve minutes as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I was not here. Okay. Any opposed? Okay. Communication correspondence workshops, there were none. New business, none. Old business. Reschedule the June meeting. I think that should be new business, but that's okay. I think you can't make it next month.
Yeah, so I'll actually be in Spain. Yeah.
Oh. Darn.
We
Sorry.
can't change it.
Sorry, you're gonna have to change your vacation.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I'll be hiking 200 miles, so I won't be feeling very good while I'm there. So, but I will be there when we have our scheduled meeting, so if we could just push it to next week, I'd appreciate that.
Can we do Monday, because the following week would be council meeting?
Council meeting.
Council,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wide open that week, so if you want to do Monday.
Okay, does anybody have a problem with Monday?
I do. I can't. My council meeting is Monday.
Monday, June 10th.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm on May, sorry.
I'm
I'm okay
I
with
got
June
it in
10th.
Richmond.
You won't, you see, you won't be here? Oh, you will? What about Wednesday?
Fine.
I can't make Wednesday.
There's
Richmond.
so many schedules.
Yeah,
I'm good with Thursday.
Thursday is good.
Here we go. We got two.
But I'm open Thursday too. Anybody opposed to Thursday, the 13th?
Thursday the 13th.
I know there's something, but.
I'm good.
Okay, so I will make the motion to move the June 4th meeting to June 13th.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any
She's
opposed?
killing it.
Okay. So the ordinance for outdoor cafes, dining, and seating areas.
Yes. So we've had several situations crop up with regard to outdoor seating, outdoor dining, outdoor cafes. And after looking at the ordinance, we see our existing ordinance is very limiting in terms of where you can have outdoor seating. If you want to have a temporary setup, how would you go about it? There's just no clarity. And with the lack of clarity comes a lot of issues. So after looking at everything and doing some research and looking at different communities that have a lot of this feature, like Royal Oak, Ferndale, looking at Rochester, Northville, looking at other traditional downtowns that have this design feature, I looked at what they provided and tried to integrate that into our new ordinance, or proposed ordinance. So if you look at the old one, it's actually at the bottom here. It was, I like these types of ordinances because they're very simple and short, but because they're so simple and short, oftentimes there's just giant holes that could be, driven through. So the new proposed ordinance is this section right here. I've expanded the definition a little bit so it brings more clarity. So it has outdoor cafes, dining, or seating areas. So now it's not strictly just outdoor cafe, because that can be kind of ambiguous or kind of create some confusion. And then started defining it and showing where you potentially have these things. And in this ordinance as well, I have design layout criteria, which the old ordinance didn't really have a whole lot with regard to that. And then I also kind of address a temporary permitting situation that can be granted to somebody who doesn't necessarily want to have a permanent outdoor seating area. So that way we can review those things, permit them as we see appropriate, and then also have a time frame on those that then would then have you reapply for the next year. Which gives us a lot of authority in that situation for places, most of the time this type of use would be like parking areas, or areas that potentially wouldn't necessarily be fully desirable in a traditional setup. So if we did grant it, we can always reassess how did this function, did it create issues, was the owner cooperative, do we have any nuisance kind of situations, and then we can always not reissue that same permit in those circumstances. So it allows us that authority to kind of just look and regulate and enforce. So this right here, I guess the first part is, like I said, the different definition there, or at least the different verbiage in the first part. It also expands it from just general business downtown, which is where it was originally a special land use only in that district. Now it's saying or general business district. So that's something we may also need to amend if we were to go forward with this, just to include that language in the general business district too. But it at least calls it out in this section that this is where it could also be done, because if that's a district that you're also going to have restaurant type uses, places where you have some outdoor seating, so it kind of makes sense to potentially have that in those spaces as well, so you don't just limit it to a smaller area. And then as you go to point A, it says that these seating areas need to be directly adjacent to and on the same parcel as the building or tenant space it occupies. So that's just one of those things that it has to just be, next to where it's serving. And then that these things have to adhere to the setback standards, but can be in any yard space. So it can be in the front yard, side yard, rear yard, depending on the design and orientation of that site. And then of course, there's always a caveat there for the public safety and welfare, which is pending review and approval from public safety and engineering. So now there's ultimate approval that goes to our fire and engineering, so they can kind of see if this is an appropriate setup or not. Item B gets into all of the design and layout criteria. The big things here is trying to eliminate the opportunity for a vehicle to, run into something like this. We're never going to make it perfectly safe, but these things should make it safer. So the big thing here is the general, for like a more permanent type fixtures, that an outdoor dining area shall be separated from a parking area, a public right of way, and other common areas, and that it'll be separated by a 4-foot tall ornamental fence, in addition to landscaping and other materials acceptable to the planning commission and upon review by the village public safety officials. And then go beyond that, says that the fence, screening, and protective barriers shall be designed in a manner that is compatible and complementary to the primary building and adjacent sites. So you can't just have, some rickety thing out there. It needs to be something that is actually complementary to the main building that's there. through his aesthetic and his characteristics and making sure it works. So that gives you that proper separation as well as that protection. Item 2, we're requiring that a 6-foot sidewalk width be maintained around these areas just to make sure that people can go by there and there's no obstructions for any type of ADA situations. Item 3, this addresses carry-out restaurants or those type of walk-up type restaurants, where in those situations you cannot exceed 12 seats for outdoor dining. This was an item that was taken out of multiple ordinances that I saw throughout the area, and that seems to be the common standard for those situations. Number 4, really at the end of the day defers to the state regulations for liquor and alcohol sales. The biggest thing here is that whatever they do, if they do wish to serve, they need to provide proof that they have been approved by the state regulatory bodies for that in their application. Beyond that, no food preparation shall take place outside, it shall be done inside the building. And then also proof of proper health department licensing for that as well. Number 5 was another one that we got from another community, which just more or less said like no music or intercom or noise shall be permitted that impacts adjacent properties and violates village noise ordinance. So you can still potentially have like music, but it gives us a way to kind of be cognizant of how loud it's being blasted out there, and if it goes beyond the decibels that are allowed by the village ordinance. Just kind of be mindful of places that might have closer proximities to like residences and other businesses that may need some quiet. Now if you go to letter C, we talk about off-street parking. In this space, this is another piece that was sort of already included a little bit in our original ordinance, but also is reflecting on what the new standards are. The outdoor dining shall be considered an incidental accessory use and therefore not included in the parking calculation of required spaces, but it has to follow certain conditions in that one. The occupant load of that outdoor dining area shall not exceed 30% of the interior occupant load. So as long as you're under that 30% of your whatever your occupant load is, the interior, you don't need to provide extra parking spaces. So that was something that was seen across the board in many communities, and I integrated into this. But then it also says that greater than 30% in the outdoor dining area shall be included as part of the floor area, and then the parking calculations will apply at that point. Item D talks about outdoor lighting. This is consistent with our existing lighting ordinances, so I just kind of cited that in that portion. Item E, hours of operation. We have a 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. kind of general guideline, or whatever the operation hours are for that principal use, whichever one is more restrictive. So that's how we organize that one. And then in item F is when we get into the temporary seasonal outdoor cafe dining or seating situation. And the idea in this one is, and the intent in this one is to encourage these types of things in places that it is deemed desirable. So that's what this is hoping to kind of address. It says that they're permitted in either the general business downtown or the general business district, and may be administratively reviewed at the discretion of the building department director / official or their designee with the following guidance and design criteria. So it's more of an administrative building permit type procedure. It doesn't necessarily have to go to the planning commission as it's currently written. Number 1, so you need a permit if you're going to do this. It's an annual building permit that's issued by the village. Permit application must be submitted, all required documents, including consent forms from the property owner or landlord, before the issuance of the permit. So these first couple are procedural. 2 is permit revocation, so we do have some criteria here for if you violate pretty much anything. We have the right to revoke your permit at that point. So that's fire code, any laws, safety codes, any other ordinances. We have the ability to take that permit away at that point. 3, you can appeal to village council. That's pretty typical of most decisions that are made. For dates of operation, this was taken also from several different other ordinances that all have the same kind of date range. If anything, this is almost like a little bit more restrictive compared to one other ordinance I saw that it all ran to November, which I thought was interesting because I'm not sure if many people that are sitting out there in November. But this has a seasonal time frame of April 15th through October 15th. So it doesn't necessarily mean you can start operation on April 15th unless you can get yourself up and running. You can start construction, basically installing your stuff as of April 15th. And then deconstruct it has to be cleaned up by October 15th. And then it says that any material that you have has to be stored in accordance with fire code and nuisance code and everything else. So you don't necessarily have this stuff laying out on the side. There's some teeth here if you wish to enforce something where it is kind of unsightly and improper storage of a material. Then item number 5, it says required design landscaping for temporary dining areas shall adhere to the design criteria as provided by this ordinance, so they'll be held to similar criteria, the same criteria as the permanent setup. So the separation barriers, the safety barriers, the landscaping, or movable landscaping, like planter boxes or something to that like, to kind of designate and protect their seating areas. And then these items may be waived by the building department director / official or their designee in specific case consideration where no good purpose would come from following such criteria. So if you designate your seating area in a place that's already landscaped, that can be considered by the building department official as something that could be enough. Or if it's a situation where it's not in the parking area, do you need parking barriers around it? Probably not. You can look at that with review and approval by the building official, also as a sent around to the fire department and engineering and everything else to make sure that this is appropriate. So it just allows some context to be considered for each design. It's not just a blanket regulation. Then number 6, this is specifically for a situation where a tenant or a specific building on a property is wishing to put dining and parking areas and parking spaces. And this is not an uncommon feature. This is something that's pretty common. But this ordinance addresses that. It says, in the event that the outdoor area is temporarily displacing required parking spaces, up to 10% of the existing spaces for the building or tenant space housing permitted use may be displaced to permit the outdoor dining. And then it says if the site consists less than 10 total parking spaces, and only one parking space may be displaced for this purpose. And then it goes on to say the outdoor dining area shall be configured to provide safe separation from neighboring parking spaces and drive aisles. Protective barriers and movable planters or decorative fencing shall be used in these instances. So, like I said before. And then further, adequate clearance for car door swing areas shall be maintained for adjacent parking spaces, maintaining a minimum of 3 feet around that, which is bare minimum like ADA 3-foot separation so you can get someone through these areas around the parking area. So that's what's being proposed. This, I feel like, is a little bit more comprehensive, addresses a lot of the design gaps that we may have had in the old ordinance, provides better clarity for permanent structures and fixtures, as well as addresses some of the temporary situations for temporary permits, and gives us a little more power and authority and clarity beyond what we currently have, which is very great. So, yeah.
Good job, Don. I like that. It pretty much addresses everything that I would have thought of. In seeing what was taking place at Carter's this past weekend, I think they were pretty much in compliance. I guess the only exception to that would be the serving on the sidewalk, which this ordinance would prohibit because they didn't maintain that pedestrian pathway. That's it.
Okay. I was just gonna say, we have on number 1, 4-foot tall ornamental fence. Should we reduce that for like, to say that we have the barriers, right? So those Jersey barriers are what, about 2 feet? Maybe 3?
2.5, 3 feet.
You know, shall we reduce it a bit so that,
It's pretty ugly.
so, I don't know, I'm just asking.
What they had up there, which I've seen before, and I have seen some other outdoor where they may have a 4-foot fence, but that 4-foot fence, I don't think was any sturdier than a 2x4 running through a concrete block. You know what I mean?
And then that was the other thing I would have said is, do we want to include, like, something, do we want to go down the line of, like, the Jersey barriers and stuff in here? Or,
Well, but the Jersey barriers would be for the parking lot?
right,
Yep. Yeah, that'd be for a situation where it's near a parking area, or it could be something where, I feel like I left it, I guess I'd be interested to see what Mr. Med says on this one too, if he wishes to comment on it, you don't have to. But when I'm talking about like protective barriers for separation of parking areas and drive aisles,
yeah,
I feel like I spoke about it purposely vague.
okay, that's what I wondered, do we want to be more specific?
Because that it allows, I think, the engineer or the fire department to recommend a treatment.
Do we want to give them more guidance, though, as their, like, in a sense of requirement? To say, I don't know,
What are you proposing?
I don't know, like, I'm proposing, let's just forget, a new restaurant comes in town. What are their expectations for safety as we define them? And I don't know, are we clear on defining them to say, I mean, I wish, I don't know, like with Dan, are we clear there? Because his requirements were the Jersey barriers there. Do we put that here to say this is the expectation, or current fire safety standards, just maybe something
Per fire approval,
per, maybe something to say per additional, any safety current, maybe that way we don't have to change the ordinance all the time, in addition to any current, caveat, touch base with the fire department if you really want to know. Yes, no, your thoughts? You left it vague.
Yeah, I mean, we can get as specific as we want to in that.
I don't think we have to we really need to define it, but we need to say, like, here, there are going to be additional safety requirements beyond what we say here.
I guess my only concern there is that now you're open to interpretation, and the application of the ordinance may differ from site to site.
Yeah, but that would be determined, that, like, if we leave it vague current safety standards, then they're going to have to get with the fire department and figure out what those are.
Yeah, so that's where under letter B, under item 1,
Yeah,
I do state, in addition addition to landscaping and other materials acceptable to planning commission upon review of village public safety officials.
Right.
And it says the fence screening and protective barriers shall be designed in a manner that's compatible and complementary to primary building and adjacent sites.
Right.
So it's sort of addressed there, like I said, like in a vague way. But I could get, like you said, more specific about like Jersey barriers, bollards,
I don't know about that,
something like that. Okay.
but just sort of like current, maybe just current safety, you know, because it might not be, or appropriate per area, you know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
Like vague, but I think if we define it, might be I agree, it might be different from place to place, right?
Usually a 4 foot is pretty standard, and you have to contain that area. Most of the applications that we've seen for outdoor seating is contained within some kind of fencing, and 4 foot high, it is pretty standard.
Okay.
But I guess my question is that a outdoor seating that's in a parking lot is gonna be totally different than, say, outdoor seating that's on the side of a restaurant, where it's not, you know, there's no traffic, you know.
Oh, absolutely. So
Still,
I'm kind of looking at this as like two parts of an ordinance. One is for a permanent outdoor type cafe, and then the temporary. Am I interpreting it right? Okay.
Yeah, so it's, the purpose for the two parts, I guess, like, under one ordinance, was to hopefully alleviate having to search through the ordinance, for different application of it. Because I've seen it in other ordinances where it is like, they'll have like an outdoor seating area ordinance, and then they'll have like a temporary structure and temporary use ordinance. And like they'll be separate from each other, and they kind of address the same thing. And then it just becomes kind of difficult to find unless you're familiar with the ordinance and know where to look. So I figured if we encompass it all in one, now you can just kind of reference this one, and then you can just kind of go down the list and find everything that you're looking for there. So yeah, this is sort of two-parted.
But other than the 4 foot tall fence for, I guess, the permanent outdoor cafe, we don't really have any type of structure, so like just the fence is all that's required. Like, I don't know, I think permanent, I think more heavy duty. I mean, I'm looking at Carter's, totally looks like a temporary thing. It's like something he's gonna take out every winter. But say Main Street wants to put one in and they actually make it part of their building, I feel like there needs to be more than just a 4 foot fence. I don't know, that's just me.
I did have one other piece of feedback, just, sorry. In F, number 1, permit required, not specifically, but just maybe something in there about associated fees.
Yeah, that was another,
Fee to be determined, not specific, so that, you know, they can be flexible if council decides to change the fees at any given time. So just,
Okay. I can add that for sure. And then with regards to the 4 foot fence, item, I mean, there are some references to, like I said, like landscaping, other materials for screening.
I guess I'm stuck on the ornamental fence part of it, because the ornamental to me feels temporary.
Yeah, I think it feels temporary, but the purpose of, I guess, the ornamental language is so that it's not necessarily like a screen fence, like a wood fence, like or something like that. It's gonna be something that's typically gonna be like vinyl or iron wrought, is more so the intent for like an ornamental fence. But the word ornamental does kind of seem like more chintzy, I guess. Like, in a way, I can see.
Yeah.
Or it can be more flimsy, but it's not necessarily always the case. It's just more so a descriptor, like an adjective to say something that's not just blocky and chain link. It's going to be something nicer.
To make it stand out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the other thing, we're required to be adjacent, so it's going to be close to the building. The other thing that I guess we can address is, I don't know if we would discuss it in this ordinance, but we could potentially put it in this ordinance, is surface types in these outdoor areas. Do we say that it's paved? Do we say that you can have paved or crushed gravel? Like, do we even address it in this ordinance? Or do we allow that to kind of be part of the engineering review and to the engineering discretion at that point for those type of surfaces?
So let me just clarify this. It sounded like there's a temporary versus permanent. Permanent is, it goes under building permits. That's a permanent structure, whatever it is. Fencing, landscaping, barriers, columns, lighting, that goes all under building department. So that has its own regulations, and these fixtures, they have to be designed in accordance with all current requirements, fire, engineering, ADA, everything. I thought this was only for temporary, what you're proposing here.
No, this is both permanent and temporary. So it's an expansion of the existing outdoor cafe ordinance, which is a permanent structure. And then this adds a temporary feature to it, but expands the permanent structure stuff.
So I kind of agree with somebody said discount before, that it need very specifically say, if it's permanent, then you have to do this, and if it's temporary, the way that this language, I think it's all temporary, because it talks about limits from April to November or October.
Yeah, but that's in the temporary, so temporary starts here,
Oh,
and then
this
here's
is
all the
just-
requirements
okay.
of the temporary.
That
That's
needs
it, that's
to
what that
be
is.
very clarified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But would permanent go through planning as part of a building's site plan? It wouldn't
Yes,
necessarily
permanent
be.
would go through the planning, site plan.
Because they need special land use.
Correct.
So any prospective user, if they were smart, would not go permanent.
Pretty much.
You're in Michigan, you really can't have it permanent unless you're gonna put it in an igloo in the winter.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
And then maybe that's temporary,
Yeah.
but outside the dates.
Well, would a permanent be outside of those dates? I mean, if it's a permanent structure and they put up, glass for the winter, or, on the fronts, or do things that make it more seasonal friendly when it's cold, wouldn't that be part of the permanent setup then?
It could be.
You COVID wax again all of a sudden.
Well, like the igloos, I mean,
Yeah.
you consider the igloos temporary or permanent?
They're still cold.
I don't know, some of them haven't gone down.
Right, exactly.
I still see it out there 24/7. So with that, I don't know.
Yes, I mean, according to this, like that, in the situation of like popping up in the season that's beyond like October, that's a temporary structure that is outside the season, that's allowable. Now, in the event that you have a permanent outdoor seating area and you pop an igloo in that situation, in that same footprint, I'm not sure. Like that's it's an interesting circumstance that I don't think we could really do a whole lot about, because it's like it's in an already permitted outdoor seating area, already developed, and then it's just like a pop-up structure that is like essentially a tent.
The
You know.
question that was raised about the surface, I mean, I think these, whether it's temporary or permanent, should all be on solid surfaces.
Yeah,
You know,
gravel.
asphalt or concrete, you know, just some sort of solid surface.
For their own protection.
Yeah.
Yeah, that must be quite the mess, they pour all that gravel out there and then it's right around. cars hitting it.
Well,
Tripping.
I mean, your wait staff and stuff bringing, they're running back and forth with food and,
Yeah, you want a nice solid surface.
But going back to what Sir Med said, if it's more of the temporary, or the permanent structure, that would all be under the building, which would be a requirement there.
Right, and just to let you know, other communities, we've seen temporary permits applied using gravel, because that's what they have.
Would this, how's the parking, does this exclude, I'm just gonna make an example, I don't know what policy to do it. Let's say the Main Street Cafe, they have a parking spot in front of their restaurant. They can't put it on a street parking.
It has to be within their property
Yeah.
limits, or get an approval from whoever owns the adjacent property. That's what John had. Did you have that?
Just even
Yeah.
public parking, parking on the
Hey,
street.
Rob was talking about Main Street, I mean, right on,
Yeah, was that excluded from?
I'm piggybacking off of you, in Detroit, in Greektown, they took off the side parking to put downtown seating outside.
Yeah.
You can't park on the sides of the road anymore, it's all like a deck with tables and chairs on them.
Yeah, typically those type of ordinances are different, because now you're talking about outdoor platform, typically called like platform dining.
Yep.
That's when you're kind of taking over existing public parking, parallel parking spaces, stuff like that. It's a different ordinance. This ordinance doesn't permit that.
Okay.
And yeah, that requires like a different fee structure, a different kind of everything,
Yeah.
that we're not really proposing here. To answer Sir Matt's question, it says that these dining areas shall be directly adjacent to and on the same parcel as the building or tenant space occupied, so they should be on the same parcel.
Looking at Carter's setup there, I mean, that's obvious, this is not permanent, so it doesn't have to
Yeah, that'd
be
a
4
temporary-
feet tall, correct? Because that's not 4 feet.
Yeah, that would be a temporary setup. And according to this,
So in the structure of this, are those cinder blocks attached to each other, or are they just sitting on top of each other with the brick top? I mean, is that all one fused unit?
They're intertwined with those,
With the wood.
with the wood, but the barriers are behind that now. There's barriers behind it, there's like Jersey barriers, his are water,
But is there something to, I mean, it looks nice, but is there something to the ordinance of safety wise that, a cinder block falls and crushes some kid?
Well, that would be on their own insurance.
Well, no, but I'm saying if our ordinance, wouldn't it have to say to a certain safety level? Otherwise, we will be held
It's
accountable
their
as well,
private property, why would we do that?
because
I
our
think we're
ordinance
doing
didn't
our,
address it.
I think we're doing our due diligence.
That's what I'm asking. Would we be held in any way responsible if this cinder block, I don't know, maybe these are all cemented or bolted together, I have no idea. I've never been there, I haven't seen it.
I think they're probably gonna sit on top of each other. That's what I think.
So I see a kid laying on the wood and toppling.
I mean, even tripping on it, like that's possible too. You couldn't knock everything back down.
So is it too temporary?
yeah, so I mean, according to this, it doesn't necessarily say that you can have cinder blocks as fencing. It says decorative fencing, and then that there is some level of, try to find it. There's a-
I mean, the picture I saw, it all looks nice. I'm more concerned about if some kid lays on that.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying, because, there's that potential, that it could fall.
And if we permitted it and said it's okay, is a lawyer gonna say, well, yeah, It's permitted.
So this.
It's the
this
city, they got
says-
deeper pockets than,
I was gonna say, right, deep pockets,
So this
They got
clearly
insurance.
says,
everybody.
protective barriers and movable planters or decorative fencing shall be used. So they'll have to have protective barriers and movable planters or decorative fencing. So it's both protection, but then also some type of design criteria for it.
Yeah, so cinder blocks are not
They're not
considered a barrier.
Yeah.
Right, right.
No, he's got the barrier around it though.
Yeah. So I was waiting for you guys to finish, but I have that covered in one of my notes, to require a copy of their insurance certificate and have the village added as an additional insured. Because we don't want to deal with this.
no, makes me feel fuzzier.
That was one of my comments. I guess I can go through them really quick. I have just a few, John. We don't have a public safety department, it's just fire department. I didn't see anywhere it says sketch submitted, maybe I missed it.
I can put that in there.
Is there a maximum day for permit, or it's basically for those 2 days? Or are we doing
It's
180 days or 90 days?
It just says that you can be permitted within that season. So
Yeah,
if you
you
get a
can
permit,
operate.
it'd be through that entire season or whenever you decide to apply. If it's after the April date, it'll be that date till October.
Okay, so they do have to give a start and open or open, close, or whatever. Okay, I'm not sure if you meant to say 6-foot sidewalk width, because ADA is 5 feet.
Yeah, I saw the 6-foot standard was something I saw in several different ordinances. So I went with that as default. But we could do a 5-foot if you think that's a more appropriate and reasonable.
It just conflicts with the ADA standard set.
It's more than the ADA. I mean, you can do that, but there's got to be a reason for it. I didn't see anything about no outdoor storage of any material is allowed.
I saw that.
Thought I alluded to that. Let's see.
Are you
I
talking
think we may have
about,
had that in the temporary section of no outdoor storage, but I think that should be something that should be included in general for the entire ordinance, that there's no outdoor storage.
Yeah, but because I think you did mention about cleaning and removing everything,
Yeah.
but during the permit period, you might want to restrict outdoor storage.
What do you suggest?
Like containers of any kind of material, propane, anything that they leave outside, oh, we're gonna use it tomorrow, you know,
I think add to that too, garbage.
and garbage.
Garbage being brought in.
Yeah, I'd be concerned about that.
I would somewhere cite something subject to current fire code also.
That's kind of what I was.
And then there is, I think Becky collected like a $200 permit fee.
She
but-
did.
But I don't know if there's any review fees included in there, like for John and I or Fire Savvy, to look at anything. Do we treat it like a plot plan first, or,
Right,
something
that's-
small?
That's where I think, do we say something associated fees and keep it general, or do we be specific and say review of A, B, and C? And associated fees with, to cover costs of A, B, C, and
Yeah,
whatever.
because that's a permit
Administration
fee,
fees.
but not a review fee. Or maybe you can just adjust that permit fee to cover
Uh-huh.
John and I and Fire Savvy. That's all I have. Thank you.
John, what about, it's not in this case, but what if that center spot was a handicap spot that they were displacing? Is it covered to where that handicap is replaced or?
So in general, you're required to, whatever the minimum is for that site, you always have to provide that minimum barrier-free handicap space. You can't place a temporary dining spot on that and then remove an ADA space.
So they
If
have to
they
make
were to do
another
something like that,
temporary
they need to make sure that that's put somewhere else that's compliant with code. But in general, they shouldn't do that, and that would never get permitted. So, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point, Rob, because those ADA ramps are only,
so many spots?
so many spots. And if that takes up that one, then the people going to wherever may have to go way down there to get up and,
And not so much like in regards to this ordinance, but all ordinance of this type going forward, I would like to see, and I don't know, anybody else, must be currently compliant and not in violation of anything else at the time of request.
oh, that's,
Okay, so that if there's any type of current code enforcement issues or anything, just, you don't even have to put your request in.
I believe,
Clean up their house.
but I believe that's already like kind of protocol.
Is it a thing?
Or
Okay.
like within the ordinance, like if you are in violation of
anything.
anything.
Yeah, do we want to include that like a little bit more? Just in, with any type of request, just like, yeah, to go through A, B, C, and D, and you also must be currently without any infractions
How
against
about
you.
the water bill? Just-
Yeah.
So that's part of the application too, like if you're
Yeah.
delinquent on your taxes, if you're delinquent on your water bill and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's just already a box you have to check.
It should be, yeah, I believe it is.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's it.
do we have like, a permit application, since we're requiring to do permits every year? Do we have a template application?
That would be something that, I don't believe we actually have a formal application developed. That's something where if we were to go forward with this, we need to develop what that application looks like.
Okay.
And
Because I don't want to put this into play and have somebody say, okay, I need to fill out that permit, I need that application. Sorry, we're still working on it.
it could be something, honestly, it could be something that's part of an existing application, that's just another checkbox for temporary dining or something. So you don't need a whole new document, it could be
Okay.
part of an existing one.
Years ago, we made up a packet of forms basically to help the building department check off things.
Becky's been using them. She gives them to somebody when they come in.
Maybe that should also be looked at and reviewed and updated and asked of Becky if there's spots in there that are holes that, you know, frustrate her. She doesn't have a way to, not with this, but just in general, since it's probably been a good 10 years since that was done, wouldn't it be?
So with the current sidewalk cafe, is there anything that we shall do or should do, or that's in existence and we're just moving forward and we're gonna eventually adopt this as part of our ordinance, or?
I think this is like so with the current cafe, it hit a spot that wasn't really there. So this would be going forward. We did the best of what we had to work with that, and this will be going forward,
Okay.
what they will have to work with
Sure.
in the future.
Okay.
So that next year, at this time, Becky's just gonna get the form, this is gonna go, and that's it.
So we shall we inform them of the October 15th stop date?
I believe they put in their application an end date of September, but I'm not 100. Does anybody? I haven't seen it, so I'm not too sure. I believe.
And should we inform them of the food preparation on the sidewalk?
Is that what they're doing?
I think that was just for Cinco de Mayo. on Sunday.
I know the Cinco de Mayo comes every year.
I know.
We'll make sure that code enforcement informs them for next year.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Oh, one more. Sorry. Other communities, we've seen allowance for 2 inspections in the permit period. I don't know if you want to add that in. Let's say you want to send the fire chief to look at something, or fire savvy, or even engineering. Who's paying for that? And usually these communities have something built in the permit, or said something like all inspections are the permit holder responsibility.
I mean, how do we currently do fire inspections?
We're just really starting to do, right?
Well, I mean, is that an additional fee? Is that an additional, we have to notify the business that we're coming, or do we drop it? How do we currently do it?
They give them a heads up that they're gonna come in on a certain day. They won't give time. Right now, our fire inspections, the first 2 they get for free, quote unquote. But then if they have to come back a 3rd time for like violations and stuff like that, then they are following the code enforcement fee schedule. Because at that point, they're coming back because they got some sort of violation.
I'd be more concerned about once the initial inspection is done and permitted, I'd be more concerned about, say, health department, and, because I would hope that a vendor wouldn't build this and then start taking away barriers because they just rented them for the weekend. You know what I mean? You know?
Would probably be a code enforcement issue at that point.
Yeah.
Should the ordinance say also health department compliance?
It does state, proper state, local, and health licensing of cables.
The current application was for 6 months, so May to September.
I'm looking at this picture and there's these lights. Are those lights just over the actual dining area, or do they stretch out in the park?
They go corner to corner.
Okay.
And they're solar.
I'm just concerned, because from this picture, it looks like it's going to the light fixtures. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know if that's tall enough for a.
No, it's just corner to corner in the little.
Okay.
All right, anybody thoughts? Anything? How do we want to proceed? Do we want to have John come back with the new language?
Yes, please.
Okay. So then, motion to, unless anybody else, anything else, motion to table this till next month to present the updated copy.
So, support.
Second.
All in favor? Any
Everybody.
opposed? Motion carried. With this, I guess, the one thing I would like to bring up too is that what we found is our permitting ordinance is a little outdated. Do we want, is that more of a council to look at, or I'll go through it in a second. Would it be more of a council thing or more something we would look at here? The permitting one, the one that was like 50 cents to come in and.
Then more so council at that point, because you're talking like procedures and fee structures,
Yeah.
and that would be.
Did they just update those fees?
No. So if you guys could look at that ordinance, just a recommendation. I don't know if you need a formal one or not, but it's ordinance 444. It's the one where we utilized.
Is that Pepper's?
No, we used it at permitting, the one that we used to do this ordinance 444. So that's the one that has like outdated costs, and it has like 5 cents to come in and get the permit, 50 cents to You'll pretty much see when you look at it that it's outdated, and, because what we haven't been doing in the community, and this is more so to Brian over there,
Yep.
is permitting anything. So, you know, if we have someone selling T-shirts in a gas station parking lot, they should be coming in for permits. And we
No.
really haven't been following up with any of that, to the best of Becky's knowledge, because Becky's never done one. So we don't have a permitting process where there's permits. It's just all kind of,
Then who's gonna enforce that? If someone comes on the weekend peddling something,
That's
it
the
should
hard
be
part.
enforced.
I hope,
Well, maybe it doesn't get enforced that weekend, but if it's weekend after weekend after weekend.
That's-
It should be enforced. If someone's selling fireworks on the corner for 4 weeks,
well,
it's
that's
not
a
just a
different,
weekend.
I mean, that's out in the open and that's quite visible, but if someone.
Exhibition of a circus.
Correct.
Pardon?
In the, well, it's in chapter 444 under fees, the exhibition for a circus is $10.
Oh. Well, hell, let's keep that. I
Any
wanna see an
sideshow
elephant
play or
country there.
theatrical is $5.
You missed it.
I know, I've seen the stories.
So just something to bring up to
That's funny.
our council. All right,
So just so you and Rob are aware, because you guys are gone, we moved the June meeting to June 13th.
Okay.
June 4th to June 13th.
Is that
That's
the Monday?
Thursday after
oh, the
the
third.
council meeting.
All because of John.
All because of John.
It's okay, but I don't think I can do the 13th.
I like John.
It doesn't matter, somebody else
I
can.
got
I'm not here. Are you good? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So, okay.
Last day of school.
Is it?
Is it, it might be, no, I think it's a week.
No, July.
It's, so, okay.
You put all the school dates on that calendar.
So, okay, moving on to the agenda, so,
Got our planners report.
planners report,
I have nothing further to report.
okay? And public comments on non-agenda items? And call from the table? Motion to adjourn.
So moved. at
All in
8 o'clock.
favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.